A controversial type of coal mining is getting new scrutiny from the government. The EPA has put under new review about 80 mining permit applications in Appalachia. They let coal companies engage in what's called mountaintop removal mining. But the EPA decision has come under heavy fire from the coal industry and even Democrats from the 4 Appalachian states affected. Clean Sky's Dan Goldstein is here. And Dan, could this just be, this could be the beginning of a long fight?
Indeed, Susan, and mountaintop mining isn't exactly new, but it's definitely got its critics. And the technique uses explosives to reveal coal seams, and in the process, companies often push the coal waste and debris into stream valleys below. And environmental groups say the surface mining destroys air quality and water resources, but coal companies are denying this type of mining and saying that it could impact thousands of jobs and increase the cost of coal-fired power. And now the dispute could spill over into the climate bill in the Senate. The EPA's decision on September 30th to review all 79 pending permit applications from coal companies seeking to do mountaintop removal mining in 4 Appalachian states sent the industry into shock.
So there's a great deal of uncertainty. EPA has not been at all transparent.
And environmentalists into celebration.
We were happy about it, but the outcome is still unclear.
Surface mining has long been controversial. Instead of digging underground, the practice means scraping off the tops of mountains and using bulldozers to get to the coal seams. The technique, the industry says, keeps the price of coal low, but environmentalists like Ed Hopkins of the Sierra Club have long contended it violates the Clean Water Act because the mine waste is often dumped into stream valleys.
The streams are literally buried under millions of pounds of mining waste. And obviously, that part of the stream is destroyed, and we think somewhere around 2,000 miles of streams have been destroyed so far. And even the downstream impacts are very significant because toxic trace metals like selenium get in the downstream water supplies, cause fish deformities, and also it's important that people have had their own water supplies disrupted.
And the White House is taking another look at those claims. In June, the administration ordered the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to review the so-called nationwide 21 permits, which were issued under a streamlined process under the Bush administration. Carol Ralston of the National Mining Association says that the government's decision could cost 80,000 jobs in the coal industry alone and will have far-reaching economic impacts beyond coal.
Between 10 and 11% of the nation's coal is produced at surface operations in Appalachia. All of them are potentially affected by this decision. And I might add that any type of large construction in Appalachia has to have the same kind of fill.
Ralston says that if it wasn't for the recession holding down power demand, the decision could raise prices for consumers who depend on electricity from coal-fired power plants. That's not true, says the Sierra Club.
That's a ridiculous claim. This mountaintop removal coal represents less than 5% in a typical year of coal production. There's plenty of other sources of coal. They don't have to use the most destructive mining techniques known to man to mine this relatively small amount of coal. We don't believe it'll have a significant effect on the cost of electricity.
But the decision is already firing up the grassroots in West Virginia, which could lose nearly 24 permits under the EPA decision. Demonstrations have already drawn thousands. Local politicians there are already feeling the coal industry is in the crosshairs of the administration, and they're expected to turn up the heat on the EPA.
I think there has to be some resolution. There were 6,000 people at the hearings last evening in Pikeville and Charleston. We saw everybody from local elected officials to doctors and school teachers and all kinds of people from coal mining communities. And I don't think that's a voice that elected officials can ignore much longer.
And some on both sides say the EPA's action amounts to a moratorium on mountaintop removal permits. And they expect the issue to surface in the Senate debate over the climate bill as Democrats scramble for votes.
The race to get 60 votes for a cap-and-trade bill is going to be desperate. And so the ability for Senators Byrd and Rockefeller and other key coal senators, they're going to be pushing for stuff that they think is going to benefit key industries within their state. And so I could definitely see a scenario where an amendment is offered to the cap-and-trade bill that would overrule the EPA's moratorium.
Now, after the set of public hearings you heard about earlier, the Army Corps of Engineers has 60 days to put together a list of decisions on the permits. But Ed Hopkins of the Sierra Club says the Corps has only started reviewing 4 of those permits. So, Susan, it could be months before a final decision is made, which could leave a lot of miners wondering about their future.
No doubt. All right, Dan Goldstein, thank you. Meanwhile, a new report from Greenpeace calls attention to international carbon offsets. The prospect of allowing companies to invest in forest preservation projects in other countries to offset their own domestic emissions is part of the U.S. climate legislation. It will also be a big topic at upcoming UN climate talks in Denmark. The report questions the effectiveness of a project in Bolivia, one that has American Electric Power, BP Amoco, nonprofit groups, and the Bolivian government all working together to stop logging in the rainforest and allows U.S. companies to get the offsets. The study says the project has fallen short of its emissions reduction goals and gives the companies a reason not to cut their own emissions. The Nature Conservancy says not so.
That the Noel Kempf project has made a very important contribution to the field of forest carbon and to the science of reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation. And as one of the first projects undertaken in the world, it developed a lot of the science and the methods that are underpinning the approaches being taken by many others today. With regard to some of the criticisms that Greenpeace has made of the project and its credibility, I would say a couple key things. The emissions reductions from this project have been verified independently by an objective third party that undertook a 2-year rigorous process. There is a publicly available document that cites all of the details in how this was done and the methods and data that were used to do that verification.
Well, the Nature Conservancy is also a key stakeholder in the Noel Kempf Mercado Climate Action Project. Marshall goes on to say all participants have worked hard to make sure this program is permanent and that 13 years ago, when the program began, it was a pilot project and the world has learned a lot from it. Siemens is moving further into the solar market. Today, Siemens announced it'll buy Israel's Solel Solar Systems, which makes solar thermal power plants and receivers. Siemens beat out French companies Areva and Alstom with a price tag of $418 million. Siemens CEO Peter Loescher said today this deal is an effort for his company to become greener and gain more exposure in the international market. Solel employs about 500 people and posted revenue of about $90 million in the first 6 months of this year. Here's a check of some energy goings-on around the Beltway tomorrow. 8 a.m., Deputy Energy Secretary Dan Poneman will announce the winners of the 2009 Solar Decathlon. This is at the Solar Village on the National Mall. Clean Skies News will be there. Experts from the China Environment Forum talk about how China is reducing its greenhouse gas emissions through efficiency. That's at the Wilson Center for International Studies, and it's at 9 a.m. 10:30, T-Boone Pickens continues his crusade, a series of town hall meetings on the importance of reducing foreign oil imports. This is at the University of Maryland in College Park. That's the Energy Report. We'll see you again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And a reminder, if you have any suggestions or comments about our programming on Clean Skies News, you can email us at contact@cleanskies.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, too. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, good night.